Thank you so much for coming to the Bond Issue Forum. My name is Kim Sorensen, President of the League of Women Voters of Greater Las Cruces. I will be the moderator of the forum this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to hold the forum in the LCPS boardroom and have it recorded for future broadcasts on Channel 20. They will be available on the LWVGLC, that's the League of Women Voters website, and the LCPS website as well. We are pleased that all of you have chosen to spend an hour with us. This is a voter education event. We will start out with a brief PowerPoint presentation about the bond issue, followed by short statements from the panelists and a question and answer period. So I'd like to introduce the panelists. I guess I'll just go. So Gabe Hvac is the committee, the LCPS Bond Blue Ribbon Committee Chair. No.
Mr. Woods.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was
Yes,
Woods.
ma'am.
You are in the, okay. You are the Deputy Superintendent for Operations.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Bridget Ziegelhofer, the LCPS Community Outreach. Dr. Ewing, Superintendent of Las Cruces Public Schools. And I've got Joe Galvin, who is the Communications Officer, and Cameron Castillo, President of the Student Advisory Council. Welcome and thank you for being here. This forum is co-sponsored by the Las Cruces Public Schools and by the League of Women Voters of Greater Las Cruces. The League is a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. We are nonpartisan in that we neither support nor oppose political candidates or parties. Gabe Hvac will begin the forum with a Las Cruces Public Schools PowerPoint presentation.
Right.
Thank you, Gabe.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here today, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this with us. So we're here today to talk about the February 6, 2018 bond referendum and election that's coming up right around the corner. This bond election will not have a tax increase based on our current taxes as we have right now. So just briefly, why bonds are necessary. So bonds help build our infrastructure. Operations run the day-to-day, but these bonds allow us to continue to keep up our facilities and have the best facilities possible for students. Just briefly, our prior bond issue 2014, our tax dollars at work. Just a couple of highlights. So Las Cruces High School is wrapping up phase 2 here shortly. It's an amazing project. If you haven't had a chance to come to go see any of these projects, we absolutely invite you to go do so. Sierra Middle School, they received a new gymnasium, music wing, and facelift in the front of their building. Booker T. Washington received a new office. We moved some things around and looked at some safety protocols, and they have a brand new office space that helps to keep our students safe and secure. Jornada Elementary, another school, and we'll be talking about this in our 2018 bond. Their office was in the middle of their school building, and so we moved it to the edge, making it more welcoming for parents and community members and students, but also looking at safety concern and access to the building. So beautiful, beautiful work there. Hermosa Heights, we just had a great ribbon cutting yesterday. Their first day open, they received a brand new multi-purpose room, which will be used, and it'll be their cafeteria as well as their gymnasium. They had some amazing performances there. The acoustics are phenomenal, so we're really excited about that. Field of Dreams, soccer and baseball. We added our soccer complex to our Field of Dreams facility out in the valley, as well as doing some upgrades at our baseball park. Lynn Middle School. So there's two projects that I want to just briefly touch on that are carryover projects. Lynn Middle School HVAC is one of the projects. And the reason that it's a carryover is it was on our 2014 bond. We were projecting the project with matching funds from the Public School Facilities Authority, and those funds were not made available to us, so we weren't able to complete that project. So that's one of our first projects as far as priority goes, to keep our promise to our taxpayers as well as upgrade their facility. And then Oñate High School, complete the installation of a new intercom system. So we were able to get halfway through that. As we worked through the project, we realized they needed an upgrade in speakers. So part of the project is complete, but we're going to carry over that project to, again, complete our promise to our schools and our taxpayers. So importance of matching funds. So some of the projects that we have, I touched on it earlier, but Public School Facility Authority, they do match funds on schools that are evaluated and ranked in a top, it used to be top 100, but it's a top 200 this year of schools in need as far as facilities go. And Las Cruces Public Schools with those projects pays a third of the project cost, and the state will pay 2/3 matching fund, which really stretches our Las Cruces Public Schools and Las Cruces community tax dollar in building our projects. So our 2018 proposed projects, we have several different categories. Americans with Disabilities Act, so we have several needs that get identified throughout, and we're always looking to upgrade and make sure that we have our facilities. Not necessarily, I mean, compliance is a big part, but also it's important for our staff and students and community to have access to everything. Athletics, so a couple of projects that we're looking at, Picacho Middle School, adding new girls' gym lockers. We're not doing really any remodel, it's just installing new lockers there. Oñate High School, new gym bleachers. They're the original bleachers that came with the school, I believe, that opened in 1992, 93, and so they're in dire need of repair. Field of Dreams Baseball Complex, lighting on the field. This is going to really help us having later games so students can stay in school and complete their school day and give us more access and usability on that field. And then Camino Real Middle School, a new basketball court for their students to use. And looking at classroom, multi-purpose centers, and kitchens. Fair Acres Elementary, we're going to do a new classroom wing. They're one of our schools that have boomed from around 300 students to the 550 range. So we're looking at a new classroom wing for them, a new kitchen, and then remodeling their multi-purpose room for additional instructional space, and hopefully work on some parking with that. Hillrise Elementary, another new multi-purpose room with a new kitchen, and then remodel again that existing into instructional spaces for the school, and hopefully removing portables that we have out there. Desert Hills Elementary is a PSFA matching funds project, so we're looking at a new multi-purpose room with a new kitchen, and again, doing the same, remodeling their multi-purpose room for some additional classroom and instructional space. Energy efficient solutions, we've set aside $1.5 million in this bond project to look at some different solutions, which include solar. We've been working with the city of Las Cruces and reaching out to other school districts that are doing that, just good stewards of energy and good stewards of our money as well. Update critical data phone and network infrastructure. We have $2 million set aside for that. We have a lot of what we call behind the walls work that we need to maintain our 41 sites. LCPS TV equipment, so the equipment we're using to broadcast possibly this and all of our events, and it's absolutely an impact to students. Students are the ones that are doing a lot of the productions now for us, so it's really exciting. Playground equipment, so we have various schools that we're looking at playground equipment, and then of course shade structures. Living in the Southwest, I think that is a huge piece. Booker T. Washington Central Elementary, Hermosa Heights, and Sonoma. And then shade structures, again, Booker T. Washington, Jornada, Loma Heights, Mesilla Park, Tombaugh, and Sunrise. And then a couple of swing sets, Mesilla Park Elementary and Loma Heights. The next item is our project contingency. So it's right around $5 million we've set aside to look at increase in construction costs and some possible other expenses that we see that we may see as we move through the projects. HVAC and roofs and intercom systems. Lynn Middle School, I spoke about the HVAC system for them. Valley View needs a new roof, so that's, believe it or not, $1.3 million to do one of our roofs. And then again, Oñate High School intercom system I spoke of. Safety, securing of school entrances, security fences, gates, and lighting. So MacArthur Elementary, relocating their front office, I talked about Jornada. This is a very similar project, expanding a nurse's office and giving them a little facelift over there. Security doors is another area that we've looked at. We used to have a buzzer system and some different things, but we really want to restrict access and control who's in our buildings. And it's not about not wanting folks in our buildings, it's just about making sure our students are safe and sound in our schools. And then security gates and fencing and security lighting. So Picacho Middle School, Vista, and Mayfield, we're looking at doing some work at those schools. School furniture, Mayfield High School, they're in dire need of school furniture, and talking to our students over there, they have some of the original furniture, and it's about time that we get that replaced to help enhance their learning environment. And then Sierra Middle School replaced their library furniture, another area that really needs some work, so we can create that as a really awesome space for students. School renovation and physical plant complex upgrades, so we're looking at Columbia Elementary School, doing some major building and roof renovations and repair at that school. And then the operations annex. So we're not building a school. We're not asking to build a school within this bond project. And so all of the operations group, which is everybody who works behind the scenes, I call them our silent partners that take care of grounds, facilities, maintenance, and food services, nursing services, and so on. So we're looking at phase one of construction of a new physical plant and operations center on our property that's just west of town. And that's for a grand total of $50 million. Our school requests exceeded $2 million, but once again, I want to say with the $50 million that we're asking for, there's no tax rate increase. The tax rate will stay the same.
200 million.
200 million, excuse me, I apologize. So here's just kind of the, here's just a chart that shows our tax rate remains the same at 9.92 per thousand of assessed value of your property. Just breaks it down, so an assessed value of a home at $150,000, it would be $496 a year that we're currently paying, and that would be our plan to continue that same. And as I move through there, just one last piece. And
you can make a real difference in our community.
Your vote gives you a say in our future.
Go vote!
Exercise your right.
Let your voice be heard.
Go vote!
Ahora es el momento
Para hacer la diferencia. Vayan a votar.
Your vote matters.
I'll see you at the polls.
Go vote!
Thank you very much, Gabe. That was awesome. I'd like to introduce an additional panelist who just walked in the door, Mr. Ben Woods. He is the...
Party for school again.
That's okay. He is the Bond Blue Ribbon Committee Chair.
Thank you.
All right. So now it's time for the panelists to introduce themselves briefly and make a statement if they wish to about the bond issue. So, yeah, you've got 2 minutes, so not very long. But we'll go ahead and start with Gabe.
all right.
Hawkes.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully that was an informational presentation. I'm Gabe Hawkes. I'm the Deputy Superintendent for the Las Cruces Public Schools. Served in several capacities as a teacher, as an assistant principal, as a principal here, and now have the great opportunity to serve our operations and leadership department and work on this amazing team that we have. As a community member and lifelong resident of Las Cruces Public Schools, I just want to say thank you to the community for always coming out and supporting our students. They're our greatest asset that we have, and I'm just one of those optimistic people that they're our future, and I do what I do for students and staff, so thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you. Bridget Ziegelhofer.
Good evening, I'm Bridget Ziegelhofer. I'm the Community Outreach Liaison for Las Cruces Public Schools. I've been with the school district for many years now, and I've seen the workings of central office and the classrooms, and that's why I feel I take a real personal interest in this bond election, because there's so many needs in our school, and our students and our staff are counting on it. So thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you. Dr. Ewing?
Well, good evening, and first let me just say thank you to the League of Women Voters. I think it's very important, the work that you do, and I respect the fact that you remain neutral and try to educate children. And that's what we try to do in the public schools every day. So from my staff, I just want to first say thank you. As the superintendent of the school district, I'm very proud to sit here in front of you and talk to you about our schools, talk to you about our students, and talk to you about our progress and our achievement. As the superintendent and as a person on the public payroll, I firmly believe that our job is only to give you information. So from my chair, from the deputy superintendent's chair, and from the staff's chair, we're not going to talk to you about how you should vote, but rather what that vote would entail. We do have community members who can speak more loudly than we can, and then we have elected officials who can talk to you about what way you might want to vote. So as you listen to us this evening, our only goal is to do what teachers do every day, and that's to educate children. And I'm proud to tell you, coming to the district, I've been here a little over a year now, and I was a classroom teacher for 16 years before I moved into administration. And then I worked in administration now. This is my 32nd year, so I've equaled the balance, 16 years as an administrator and 16 years as a teacher. And what I can tell you is the items on the list are things that will be used by every facet of the community and by every facet of the school. So whether it's an instructional room, whether it's an art room, whether it's a cafeteria, whether it's a parking lot, whether it's air conditioning, these are all vital components of a school system. I also firmly believe that our school buildings should be open to the public, open to use, and open to all of us here within the community. And so as you look at our list and as you look at what we have here, we're all here to answer questions. We're here to give you more information that you may not have. And we certainly thank you for your attention, and we thank you for even thinking of the school system.
Thank you. Ben Woods?
Good evening. My name is Ben Woods. I'm honored to be a part of a group of citizens who have come together because we believe in our school district, its leadership, and we believe in this bond issue. So as private citizens, we're giving our time because we want to see it passed. I had the great good benefit of being employed at New Mexico State University for 25 years, retired from there a couple of years ago. Recently went to work at Mountain View Regional Medical Center, and I'm very grateful that they've provided me the opportunity to participate in this. I know firsthand, by having two children that came through this district that went on to do anything they wanted to do in their life with regards to their education, and now have two grandchildren in this district. And my wife, who still is an active participant as a teacher in the school district. And I know firsthand from following all of these years the quality of what we can achieve. I also know the depth of the challenges that face each of us every day. But I believe in the process that we follow. I believe in the governance we have in place. I believe in this bond. And I believe that given the opportunity, the voters of our community will as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Galvin?
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. My name is Joe Galvan. I'm the Chief Communications Officer for the school district. I think this is about the 10th bond issue I've been involved with in our school system history over the past 30 years. One thing that I hope that we can touch on tonight is to explain that every item of need in our district is critical because it benefits children and staff, particularly our children. And we don't just take a dart and sort of throw it at a map on what are we going to fix next. It's a very complicated puzzle that is a year in the making. We have been looking at schools, touring, getting reports, hearing from staff and parents, what are the needs out in our school district. And it comes down to age, whether they've been on a bond issue before and we haven't been able to do that item before. If there's matching monies involved, perhaps it's a project that could be paid from other funds other than bond issues. Some items aren't eligible for bond issues, such as textbooks. So there's a lot of reasoning and rationale that goes into making a decision to put before the electorate. But one thing is that it is scrutinized. It has gone through a lot of stages and reflection and homework, and we hope that we have overall some of the best choices, unfortunately meaning they're the neediest places that we need for the immediate future, and that we'll continue to do all the repairs by other funds or by bringing them back to you again in 4 years. So hopefully we'll touch a little more on that tonight, and we appreciate League of Women Voters getting people out to vote, which is really important.
Thank you. Cameron?
Thank you, Ms. Sorensen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cameron Castillo, and I'm the student body president in Centennial High School and the chairman of the Las Cruces Public Schools Student Advisory Council. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having this important educational forum for us tonight. As Dr. Ewing was saying, people on the payroll here in this district cannot urge you to vote one way or the other on this bond, but because I'm still 16 and they won't let me on the payroll here, I have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to telling you how I think you should vote on behalf of the students. When we look at the issues that we have in and around our district, such as at Mayfield, where some of the furniture that they're using is the same furniture that they opened with in 1965. My parents weren't alive in 1965. Or at Sierra Middle School, where their bookshelves in their library, their media center, look like cardboard boxes that pose a serious risk to their students. We need to look at the bond as a device that could fix some of these issues, these glaring issues in our district. This is an investment in the nearly 25,000 students that we have here in Las Cruces, and I hope the voters of this area would see it as such. As Mr. Woods was saying, we have the opportunity to provide our students here in the district, the students that I'm fortunate enough to represent, with the tools that they'll need to be successful. And one of the bright spots of this bond, when I look at it, is your taxes will not go up. The bond committee that was assembled for this project originally had $200 million worth of things that were needed, but they were able to narrow it down to $50 million worth of projects. That way the voters would not see a tax increase if they chose to approve this bond. So Ms. Sorensen, thank you for the opportunity to speak on the bond, and I look forward to hearing the questions from the public.
Thank you, Cameron.
I think we can all sign up for Cameron 2040 now.
Exactly.
I'm not sure what, but it'll be something, Cameron in 2040.
Okay, so it's now time for questions. We have questions that were submitted earlier, but I'm assuming that many of you have questions as well. So I will start out by asking a question that was submitted earlier, and then we'll turn it over to, there will be a couple of league members that will be going around. So if you'll just raise your hand if you have a question, and they will bring the microphone to you. Questions should be short, relevant to the bond issue, and civil. You may address your question to a specific panelist or to the panel as a whole. We will allot 2 minutes for the first answer and 1 minute for any additional responses. So the first question to anybody: why do you believe that bonds are a good choice over other options?
I'll take that. We have an opportunity in the state of New Mexico that bonds are particularly used for our brick and mortar. We have a way to fund our school system operations on a day-to-day basis, but the bonds through your property tax, that is the best way, the most preferred way to be able to do brick and mortar and big maintenance and large remodeling projects. So it's specifically set up for the property tax, and therefore the public has the opportunity to say, I agree or I don't agree. And so they make the decisions essentially on whether we will go forward with these projects, and then the state revenue runs the district on its day-to-day basis.
Okay, follow up? Dr. Ewing?
Yes, just to add to Ms. Galvan, so to remind the public, the funding we receive from the state, when we calculate that funding in the district, 92% of that funding is used for salaries of employees. And so with that only leaves us 8% remaining. And so when you look at a list of $50 million, there's no way we would have $50 million remaining in the funding coming from the state. So if we did not have this bonding capacity, then we would have to look to reducing staff, reducing teachers, reducing clerical positions in order to fund what we would consider critical infrastructure needs in the district. So New Mexico is lucky in that we have this opportunity to go before the voters in a different avenue, and we can still maintain the same classroom environment and the same environment in a school building.
Thank you. Is there a question from the audience?
My name is Linda Peterson. I'm a new resident of Las Cruces, so I have a three-part question. And my first question is, when was the last time there was a tax increase in the property tax? Second question is, the list of projects that were listed up there, are those prioritized? So you're starting from the top down to be able to address those. And what will happen to those lower prioritized projects if they're not funded? And then the third question I have is, everything I'm reading in the paper about the state budget is getting this boom from oil and gas money. Will there be an opportunity for any of that to translate down to support some of the projects? Thank you.
I can answer the first part of the question. I believe it was either 1991 or 1993. I'd have to go back in my history book. That was the last time we actually had a tax increase for bonds.
Thank you.
Not since then.
And I can answer number two as far as the prioritizing of that. So what we will do is we will come together. We've had this discussion already throughout the process, but we'll come together with the bond oversight committee and look at the projects, and we're actually going to start here shortly and look at the projects, prioritize them out. And it's kind of interesting because there's different ways to phase things in. So we'll look at if, some, like, let's just say, for example, if we're doing a major project, we might be able to start phase 1 dirt work. We normally roughly quarter that money over 4 years. So it's really important that we have that kind of chain of event or that sequence. And I know you also asked about what if the lower priority projects do not get finished. It's always our goal to be committed to taxpayers as well as our staff and students that support our school district to complete our projects. So, for example, the 2 projects that we didn't finish due to some different ideas out there, we'll be transparent about it along the way, but also figure out a way. We also have some other opportunities, hopefully, and we're looking every year. The state will re-rank our schools and their conditions. So sometimes in this, we might also get some more bang for our buck and be able to spread out that money if our schools are ranked differently. Hope that answered your question.
Then I can.
I'll take you want me to take a shot at the third one? I'll give you my perspective on the third one based on having been involved in our governmental affairs at New Mexico State University for about the past 20 years. We do have some surplus funds coming into the state budget, but the reality is the state of New Mexico never really has recovered out of the 2008 recession. And while states around us have seen their economies recover, with the exception of some oil and gas revenue that we're fortunate to have, we don't see that happening elsewhere. As a result, over the past 10 years, those agencies of the state, those entities of the state that are dependent upon state revenue, have seen their budgets actually decrease significantly. Whether they are public schools or higher education, whether they are the courts, whether they are whatever arm of the state of New Mexico. If you look at the demands that currently exist, even with what is seen as a good year for us, it's good relative to the fact that we've had several years where we've had to actually decrease our budget as opposed to hold our budgets level. If you look at the demands of Medicaid upon our state, you look at the need to try to affect some changes to wages that we've not been able to do for our teachers, for those employees of the state over the years. What money is new will be absorbed fairly quickly. And I would also add that in the past, in order to make budgets meet, they've used some one-time money to meet operational needs in the state. So a significant portion of this revenue, which you hope to see as recurring, will need to go towards a permanent fix for some of those budget needs where they used one-time funds in the past. So we still have a long way to go in New Mexico to be able to get on stable footing and good, strong footing.
Thank you very much. So in regards...
Am I allowed to give a response too?
Yes. Please.
And so I'm just going to piggyback on some of what he has said. So I'm new to the state also, so I've been here a little over a year. You're going to love the weather, I can tell you. Coming from Georgia, I came from a state where your property taxes actually impacted the funding going into the school district. And so some counties had much more funding than other counties. In New Mexico, it's done a little differently. All the money is sent to Santa Fe, and then it's distributed equally to the school districts through a formula. And so what I can tell you is, as any superintendent would say, that formula is not strong enough to support the infrastructure that we need here in the district. So just to quickly throw some numbers at you, we have employees who work for us, who qualify for food stamps, and who live in poverty. And that's really unacceptable. So look at some of our custodians, look at our food service workers, look at our bus drivers. There's work to be done there. Then when we look at our teaching force, and I mentioned to you before, I'm a proud teacher. I always describe myself as a teacher. We have teachers who have a family of 4 who still qualify for public assistance based on a teaching salary within the state. When we budget a teacher, we budget $75,000 a year. And teachers are quick to say, I don't make $75,000 a year, but approximately 40% of that is benefits that we pay for them. And so as we begin to look, we know there are staffing needs in schools. And I see Dr. Miller Tomlinson, will you wave your hand? She's in the audience there in the back. And so I'm going to encourage you to speak to her at the end. She has an enormous job as our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning to balance the teaching loads in every single school. And in a perfect world, children would come in bundles of 25, but they don't. And as a high school teacher, in a perfect world, if I were a math teacher, all those classes could be balanced. But what happens when 18 kids want to take calculus? I still want to offer that course. What happens when 9 of those want to take the next level Calculus BC course? We need to push more and more, but then that means that those Algebra 1 classes are going to have 30 and 35 in there. And so when you talk to our teachers, quite frankly, they're exhausted, and they're exhausted from the workload, and they're exhausted from the number of students. So as we look at any additional revenue that comes in, I look to the budget department. They're going to tell me no more reoccurring revenue, but we've got to do something to sustain the teaching force, and we've got to do something for our employees living in poverty. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The next question, in regard to, you said that you solicited a lot of input to prioritize the projects. Did you include students and teachers in your input?
I can go ahead and turn my mic on. I can go ahead and take this one. I will say that as a student, Dr. Ewing's office and the school board led by Senora Maria Flores, who isn't here with us tonight, any major policy matter that comes before either outlet has the opportunity, is advised on by the students. When the bond was brought before the school board, there was a student sitting where Mr. Hawkins is sitting right now who had the opportunity to give input. And I can let the people at home know, no doubt, no matter what, students are involved in the decision-making of this district. So students were absolutely involved in this, as we are with the Blue Ribbon Committee. Myself and another student serves on that.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else?
Just as a follow-up too, as far as the staff part of that, so we did have a very diverse bond committee that looked at this. So the process just briefly starts out as a kind of a grassroots at the school level. We ask principals to get with their staff, students, communities, and identify their highest needs. And then those are submitted to this committee that then we divvy it all up and go, we call them field trips. We go out to schools and go talk to staff, students, go take pictures, go look at that, and then report back. So I'm proud to say that I feel like there's a lot of input and discussion that goes on, and it's been a year-long process just in working on this. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I'll add just one more. With our state being a state that allows collective bargaining, so we have our National Education Association union representatives here, and so those individuals, whether they're representing teachers or whether the CSEC section is representing our classified employees, those individuals were also included and consulted and certainly allowed an opportunity to express any viewpoints that they wanted to. If they didn't come to the specific meetings, we actually presented the bond information in this boardroom to the board and allowed the board to actually vote on that information, and there would have been public comment time here as well. And we went to the point to even place it on TV. And I think the thing I'm most proud to say as a superintendent, sometimes school boards will insert themselves in this process, and our school board did not. They took the list as it was. And so to any voter who's thinking, did something get put on here because some one person wanted it? I can say to you, and from the most proud part of sitting on this dais, that they took the list as we presented it and passed it as we presented it. And that means a lot to the work of the committee members who did the work, and it also means a lot to me because it shows that the board has full faith and trust in what we're doing as a group.
Thank you. Is there another question from the audience?
My name is Mary Martinez White, and my question has to do, I believe I saw that there was some allocation for solar, maybe 1.2 or 1.5 million. Is there any effort in the school district to go for sustainability in terms of clean energy that would generate primarily from solar? And in addition to that question, does the school district look for funding from, for example, Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department, which funnels federal grant money to schools?
So to answer your question, so yes, yes to several of those questions. So we're looking at kind of a big picture as we move forward in our projects to include that in a lot of our projects. We don't want it to be kind of a standalone, solar project that we're looking at, but how do we create sustainability? And in that process, and working with the city of Las Cruces, and again, reaching out to some other school districts, we've actually, we've learned a lot and we've been educated a lot on some different energy type bonds and some different funds available. So we really feel like we can take this money and maximize that out and hopefully incorporate it in even doing some assessments I'll use Lynn Middle School as an example. As we're coming in to look at their HVAC, to really work with specialty groups that may be able to guide us, and maybe we can incorporate some sort of clean energy or clean energy sustainability with that project. So as we go along piece by piece, that we're building that into kind of, I guess, our future vision of the district, that we really want to get to that point. And one of the neat things is we not only become good stewards of energy and public funds, but also as an educational institution, we're modeling that for our students in our future. So.
And I can add just another sentence. So first I want to recognize Councilwoman Flores in the audience. Thank you for coming tonight. And we held a joint meeting between the school board and the city council. And at that joint meeting, and so board member Ms. Dahlman is beside her, I see you all are continuing to work together. At that meeting, the city council was kind enough to do a presentation for us on an outside agency that actually came in to the city, and they look at the cost of utilities, gas, water, just different things in a particular building, and then they guarantee you that they can bring that cost down by a certain percentage. And so we looked at that very carefully, looking at some of our own utility bills. And so for us, just one thing that might be surprising to you as an audience, we wanted to know what was one of our largest electricity bills. So I don't know if you are like I am in the summertime. When the air conditioning's on, I see dollar signs and I think, okay, how long is it going to run tonight? Well, some of our buildings are quite large, and Centennial High School, Cameron's High School, has several standalone buildings. And when you have all those outside walls, that makes heating and air conditioning even more expensive. And so just the electricity bill for the month of August for that campus is $50,000 a month. And so if we are able to use any type of solar energy that would create a savings, I multiply 50 by 12 and get 600,000. And so for us, we could have a repayment of that in less than 2.5 years. So we're school people. We tend to think like school teachers. And now your question's giving us even more fodder for looking to the future the way a person would think as a business individual with what we do, with what little funding we have. And I thank you for the question.
Okay, how will the bond principal be paid back?
It's paid through, it's paid through your property tax. So every time you make your payment, a portion of that goes to the school district. Our rate for all of the taxes that we have for the schools, and that includes bonds and mill levies, there's 2 that are in place, it's $9.92 for every $1,000 of assessed value. So every time you make those payments, that's how it gets paid back.
Anybody else?
And the bonds are generally, if I'm right, Ed, around 15 years that we pay on bonds before they're paid off.
Another question from the audience? Yes.
I always have a lot of questions, and this may not be relevant, but it does have to do with schools and funding. And is there any way that we can get the state legislature to release some of that money from the land grant, the general land grant money? Excuse me, yes. Permanent fund, the land grant. Is there anything that, I don't even know if it's relevant to structural aspects such as this bond is focused on? But I just want to open that.
It's my understanding, I think there have been several conversations with that. I think there's a bill pending now that would actually become a constitutional amendment that would go to the voters, where an additional 1% would be used for education, including our pre-kindergarten classes. And so this will be the first time that we see how voters actually react to that, if it's actually passed by both the House and the Senate. And my understanding coming to New Mexico, it doesn't require the governor's signature. It just requires a majority in both the House and the Senate. Then it will simply go to the voters. As a new person to the state, looking at such a large surplus, to me, it looks like a large amount of money for a state that's in dire need of assistance now. And just the interest alone on that funding has to be quite significant. So I know that there are legislators who have proposed things in the past and that hasn't worked, but for the first time I think we're seeing something move through, and you may actually see or hear more than what we do how far that bill has gone.
I could follow up with that on, in terms of the capital outlay funding for the state. Certainly there's been a need to have more capital outlay funding that would go to public schools, because that's also limited. One of the things that we're also hoping for is that we mentioned before that every school in the state gets ranked, and if you're in the top 200 now, you're potentially eligible for a match, which really helps the local dollars go a lot further. One thing that we are hoping will change through legislation is that when you do make an improvement at a campus, such as Mayfield High School, that then the ranking doesn't just fall off the page. Before, it's sort of getting dinged for helping your school. And so they're working toward maybe not having that, so that the school can continue to have the rank to be eligible, because we need to have those extra funds in order to put toward capital outlay.
As a follow-up to my question, though, the way the Constitution is now is that money is there for schools 1st through 12. Isn't that correct?
I think that a certain percentage of those dollars, I think the way the money goes, it goes to the legislature and then they appropriate what percentage to education. I don't think we just have the sole rights to that funding.
Oh, the permanent fund? No, that's absolutely correct.
Actually, you may have 2 permanent funds. You have the land grant fund.
There's a land grant.
And the land grant fund is a fund that was generated by public lands that were set aside, the proceeds of which come back and assist in, dependent upon what the land was specifically set aside for. There are public lands in this state that are administered, that the proceeds from which serve public education, and the funds from that come into education. There's also public land set aside for each of the land grant universities in the state. And there's also land set aside for certain other entities of the state. So you have that permanent fund associated with that, but that's separate and distinct from what is commonly thought of as the permanent fund, which is the severance tax money that's gone in over the years and has built up to the significant amount.
But there, I think there's two separate, and I think that, oh, you mean I get cut off too? Well.
Thank you. With regard to the contractors that will be doing the work, to what extent do you try to hire local?
So we absolutely look for local contractors. So everything goes through our procurement process, which is, follows the state procurement process. So it goes through an RFP, and you can't always control who bids on projects and scope of work that's out there. One of the things that is interesting, just in some recent readings and news, El Paso they've passed several large bonds, and they're having a lot of New Mexico contractors that are reaching out and bidding on projects over there, which I think they're a little bit agitated about because they're looking for their local folks. But that that's in the back of our minds as well, because they're working on projects, and they might not have the capacity to be doing both. But we've been very successful. Couldn't give you a percentage off the cuff, but we absolutely encourage and enjoy having local folks.
Great. Dr. Young?
I think we also just have to remind everyone, so first I want to introduce Mr. Ed Ellison. He's in the audience. Ed, raise your hand. He's our Chief Financial Officer, and so all of this resides in his division. And so anytime you're dealing with large amounts of money, you have to have a certain set of procedures in place, and we follow those very closely. And so the procurement office, when we open a bid for a contract, that entire bidding process is already predetermined, the procedure that we would use for that process. And then the actual awarding of that bid becomes a public process here in the board meeting, in the boardroom. And so we follow those procurement procedures very, very carefully. And in some of those procurement procedures, there's extra points added when you're inside the state and different things. And so we also look to make sure that the company taking the bid actually has the sustainability to complete the project. We don't want to write a check to someone for a large amount of money and then the project not get done. The same as you, when a contractor comes to your house, we all know don't give them the check up front. We all know to check the Better Business Bureau and those things. And so in a very simple term, they do that in his office. And I'm going to encourage you to see Ed after the meeting, and he can give you all of the procurement procedures. He enjoys those things.
This is a related question, so I'll go ahead, and it's probably you will be the one to answer this, Ed. Who is responsible for giving approval for going over budget on the projects?
Sure. May he answer?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, again, I'm Ed Ellison, the interim chief financial officer. And the way that works is when there's a change order, up to an amount of $50,000, it's based on the project manager and determined by the needs. And so in addition to that, if it's over that amount, and if it's going over budget, that has to go through a process of being approved by the executive cabinet and then again by the board. So when there's a large change, that has to be approved. And so we go through that process as well.
So $50,000 is our threshold.
Okay.
It seems that you've used a very sound process in coming up with your prioritized items, and that you've made a compelling case for why these improvements are needed. And you're offering this bond at no tax rate increase. I'm just curious, people who oppose this, who could potentially be voting no, can you share with me some rationale for the other side?
Bridget, you want to try that?
If I could, if I could speak, since it'd be difficult for, I think, those, but I would tell you, from the Blue Ribbon Committee, we've not yet had anything raised as to why anyone would oppose this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, at this point, we are out of time. We have to be out of here by 6:30. I want to thank all of you for coming and for your questions. And I want to thank the panelists It was a very informative event, and we all wish you well. And in closing, we're going to have some final words from Dr. Ewing.
Sure. Well, first, once again, I just want to say thank you to the League of Women Voters. I want to say thank you to those of you who showed up in the audience today. And I'll close by saying, as we look at this bond referendum, this is a bond referendum for the community. This is a bond referendum for students. This is a bond referendum for teachers, for police officers, for cafeteria workers, for custodians. It's a bond referendum for all of us. And so we couldn't do this work without you. We couldn't do this work without your support. All of us come in each day with one tenet in mind, and that is what's best for children. All of us ask ourselves all day long, is the decision we're making a decision that's best for children? And so we ask you, as you go to the polls, to ask yourself, is this what's best for children? And if you can answer that, then we certainly appreciate that. And we're certainly here between now and the voting day to answer any questions you have. And we pledge to you, as we always do, to be open and transparent with any information we have. And I thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I would like to encourage the audience to stay around if you still have questions. I think the panelists are willing to stick around and answer questions, any questions that you may have. So thank you so much.